Welcome to News with a View, hosted by me, John A. Costa. Today is January 26th, 2026. This is episode 16. And today it's going to be more on, not more on. We know who's a moron. But this is going to be more on the civil and criminal proceedings on violators of our immigration law. A lot of talk from protesters saying that people are being kidnapped and it's illegal on what they're being done to, and there is a violation of their Fourth Amendment right. These people have no idea what they're talking about. Let's get into it. Title 8 of the U.S. Code identifies, and it's Title 8 of the USC, subsection 1325. And this identifies federal criminal offenses pertaining to immigration and nationality, including the following two entry-related offenses, which would be under subsection 1325. So, it makes it a crime to unlawfully enter the United States. Now, what does unlawfully enter the United States means? It means you did not go through one of the 17 designated immigration areas. I think it's 17. It applies to people who do not enter with the proper inspection at port entries, such as those who enter between ports of entry, avoid examination or inspection, or who makes false statements while entering or attempting to enter. A first offense is a misdemeanor, punishable by a fine and or up to 6 months in prison, or both. So we'll talk about this again a little bit later on in the show. This show is going to be about 45 minutes of where we start taking apart section 1325. Now, Title 8, USC, subsection 1326, deals with illegally re-entering the United States, which makes it a crime to unlawfully re-enter, attempt to unlawfully re-enter, or to be found in the United States having been deported, ordered removed, or denied admission. So when you see people that have come back, were deported and they said, hey, they came back 3 months later and snuck into the country, they fall under a little bit more of a crime. The crime is punishable as a felony. Now, that's a federal felony. With the maximum sentence of 2 years in prison. Higher penalties apply if the person was previously removed after having been convicted of certain crimes, up to 10 years for a single felony conviction other than an aggravated felony conviction, or 3 misdemeanor convictions involving drugs or crimes against the person, and up to 20 years of aggravated felony conviction. So if you've been a bad boy or girl and were deported because you did a serious crime, but instead of holding you here, we just deport you back to your country. And if you come back in here, then the weight of the system falls upon you. Now, in those cases, they had exclusive, undeniable Fourth Amendment rights, where your Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment rights all come into play. If you're charged in a criminal offense, even though you're not supposed to be here, you do get a lawyer assigned to you under federal or a court lawyer, and you get representation if you cannot afford representation. You will not go in front of a judge without an attorney present. It's guaranteed. But you're going to be locked up. You're not getting out. You're not posting bond. It's a very serious offense. So, re-entry into the United States after being kicked out falls under a much more serious offense. So if you came back in after you were deported, let's say you were just deported, you had some type of little crime, nothing bad, shoplifting. It's bad, but you're not hurting anyone. You stole a car. You didn't hurt anyone. And you come back in. And you get caught. Now, normally that would require us to provide you with a lawyer. But what happens in a lot of these cases is what's called a flip-flop plea. Now, understand, I'm not a lawyer. I didn't play one on TV. I didn't do anything like that. I'm not a lawyer. I'm taking this information straight out of textbooks. So what they try to have these people do is go tell them, listen, you're screaming that we must provide you a lawyer. All right, we hear you. But if we charge you, you've entered this country illegally, re-entered, and then we'll charge you with an additional an illegal entry with an illegal re-entry. So, you're going to go to jail for at least 2 years. But now, if you plead guilty to the lesser charge of just illegal entry, we won't charge you with a felony. We won't prosecute you for 2 years. And if we find other things that start getting tagged on, it could be longer. But that's up to you. And most of the time, the defendant will take the flip-flop plea. Now, this poses a serious concern that these people start giving up their rights, and they give them up voluntarily, and you can give up all your rights voluntarily. And what ends up happening is it's just to expedite this guy back out of the country, or person back out of the country, without having to have legal representation costing taxpayers money. And also, once this guy pleads to the lesser, he's going to sign away his other rights. He might be told, but he does not understand what that all means. And they'll tell him that, hey, listen, you don't agree to all this. And you don't have to agree to all this. But if you don't agree to this, then we charge you, and we guarantee you're going to go to jail for 2 years. And then we get to deport you again. So we could skip all that and just deport you. They sign a paper, done. I realize I sign, boom, 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 initial, and that's it. And lawyers get upset with that because they go, you're kind of hamstringing these people in. You're kind of making it impossible for them to make an informed decision because they don't know the information. Who would? Who would? 98% of the citizens of the United States would not know that. Now, the police all know this, and prosecutors all know this. And in these cases, this happens so quickly that in many cases, charged migrants accept the plea agreement, plead guilty, and are sentenced in a matter of hours. And once you agree to it, that's kind of it. You've agreed to it. The idea of people saying it's not a violation, it's a civil. No. If you've come into this country illegally and not gone through the immigration process, I'm not talking about TPS, temporary protection status, and parolee status, because even in those cases, they had to present themselves to someone to get on that list. We're talking about people that are on loan list. They're staying real low in the shadows. And we don't know who they are. Those are the people that will get jammed up under this. And they are criminals. They're misdemeanor criminals under the federal law, which is the lowest of low. I mean, it's a very low bar to get to. And that's why most of the time the fine is $50 or $200 and 6 months in jail. It's not a very high penalty, but you do get deported. And you don't get the right of having an attorney present with you if you can't afford one. Because it's a civil penalty. We don't have to provide a lawyer for that. So it gets very dicey. And people can say, hey, they're being hoodwinked and stuff. They're not being hoodwinked. They're just given a choice. Which is worse. And I think that eventually we're going to have to change things so that there is no ambiguity between a citizen and an uninvited guest. And this is all being caused by the prior administrations not adhering to our border policies. This is all on the Democrats. Honestly. Oh, this is Obama and Biden. Now, things happened way before this. But we can't go back to the beginning, but we can go back 20 years and look at what was done. And a lot of problems. A lot of problems that are being caused because of the failure to secure our borders. Now, we'll talk about the latest Minnesota shooting. Again, the Peretti shooting. The left media, CNN, MS Now, MSN, BuzzFeed, lots of other ones, are all saying the video shows an unarmed person on the ground, alluding to the Border Patrol agent and other agents, that there was no reason to use deadly force. Now, you see the video, it all happens very quickly. They show the guy coming up with the camera, they show the guy getting into a confrontation with the agent, and a scuffle begins. A scuffle begins. Because this person injected himself into a policing activity. You can't do that. So let us not forget what these left outlets are not showing. Peretti openly defying the agent's commands to stand back and not interfere with their actions. And he's, screaming, I have a right to video. Yeah, you do. But not with us. Go stand on the sidewalk. And their failure to obey the agents or border agents and ICE agents' demand to step back, to get out of it. And a scuffle starts, and Peretti is pushed to the ground and is disarmed of his legally carried weapon. Now, the question I asked, did Peretti announce he was carrying a weapon when he was down on the ground? How did they find it? Did they see the gun? Now, he was not flashed. I did not see any video of him flashing the gun. I didn't hear any video of him saying, I have a gun, or I'm declaring, hey guys, here's my hands up in the air. I don't have a gun. I have a gun. Now at this point, how do you want me to proceed? But he injected himself into a situation. He is allowed to carry a weapon. But while he's on the ground, after the one agent took the weapon from him, which at that point the police can do, he's now taking the gun away from the scene. The other agents are subduing him, knowing, hey, we just took a gun off this guy. And now this guy apparently reaches down for something, is in the process of pulling it out. They don't know if it's another gun. And the police, well, I don't call them police, I call them federal agents, unload on the guy. And they're like, why did they have to shoot him so many times? Because I don't know if his bullet hit him. And the guy next to me doesn't know if his bullet hit him or my bullet hit him. So he shoots. And this is what happens. This is what happens. Yes, he was lawfully allowed to carry that weapon. No questions about that. No argument about that. But I have to think of the logic of carrying a weapon to a protest that you are going to interject or inject yourself into interfering with a police agent. How, what was going through your head? And they go, well, he didn't know he was going to inject himself in there. He got caught up in the moment. Well, okay, he's armed, which he's allowed to be. But wouldn't in your head you'd go, I got a gun. They got guns. Yeah, this could turn out very bad for everyone. Now, I could stand over here and take pictures and go, you pigs, you fascists, you're this, and that's fine. You could do all that. But when you step over that line and interfere with federal agents, and you are carrying a weapon, yeah, I'm going to tell you some bad things can happen. Now, we don't know the full extent. We see snippets. You're getting testimony from the people around there. Yeah, they shot him. They shot him on purpose. I heard them. So it's going to be very confrontational statements. Now, when the dust settles and people start investigating and they tell them, okay, listen, I know what you said there, and in the heat of the moment, and we're going to ask you the questions again. We're going to give you a chance to think about your answer. Because if you don't know, now is the time to say, I don't know. But when you commit yourself to say something that you do know, and it might not be what really happened, there could be, people can try to charge you making a false statement. Now, that's not intimidation. That's telling people who have no idea of the process what the problem could be later on. It's not intimidation. You might then feel intimidated, but that's just them saying, hey, just know. So Freddie was warned by his family, be careful. Be careful. And they knew he was carrying a gun, and they told him, be careful. Governor Walz has told protesters and statements that protesters must remain peaceful and obey the police. Now, when he says police, he's meaning federal, I would think. So now Governor Walz is demanding that ICE agents leave his state or limit the numbers and their scope of enforcement in Minnesota. So he wants to marginalize the ICE agents and border agents, which ICE agents are different than border agents. They're both federal law enforcement, but different agencies. Now, Department of Homeland Security has sent in many agents into, Minnesota for a reason. One, they needed backup for the agents that were already there. And secondly, the scope of crimes done by immigrants and commercial enterprises run by immigrants, citizens, is so high that it needs to be investigated before people can get out of town. And we've already seen where someone tried to take, I don't know, like $350,000 in a suitcase in cash out. So there are people running. Where Walsh is complaining about the federal agents there, the United States Constitution, Bill of Rights, there's a clause, I'll say Article 5, Clause 2, the Supremacy Clause states that state judges and courts must follow and conform to federal law under the 10th Amendment. Now, the courts, judges, must abide by that. The states do not have to use their resources in carrying out federal law. They can if they elect to, which is fine. But at any time they could say, nope, no more, we're stopping it. Or we're just not going to do that. And when I say carrying out federal law, I'm saying that to criminally enforce, the police can't be used to enforce federal law. That's why you have IRS agents and such that are different. And you have FBI and DOJ, because they act in the federal arm. The state courts and judges must abide by that. They're bound to it. So when you have Governor Walsh who wants ICE barred, can't do it. Can't do it. Now he'll say, well, I want it limited. There are no limits on the president's power and authority for sending as many federal agents into a state. Period. It's not in there. It's not in the big book. And what did I say happens when it's not in the big book? And people question the big book. Then it goes through federal judges in an appeal. And now we have the steps going up to the robes. But I am certain that this has been vetted in the past, because it has been used in the past. It has been challenged in the past. And because the words say the president has the power to do it, if you want to say add 10%, 20%, 30%, that's all you could do, then you must amend the supremacy clause and put that in there. Think that's going to happen? I'm going to say no. And people are going to say, well, you know, they changed Roe v. Wade. Yeah, because abortion was never even mentioned in the big book. And as such, there's no language to amend. Doesn't exist. So, if it doesn't exist in the big book to be even discussed, it goes down to the states. Let the states decide. the power of the president doing what he's doing, that's there. So it is, there's no using one against the other. You might get a chance where a lawyer will ask, well, give me your reasoning for sending in 2,000 ICE agents into a state that has a population of X. Does that mean that in Texas or in California you'd send 20,000 ICE agents because the population is X? And the answer would be, if necessary, sure. And they go, well, what do you consider necessary? An uncooperative state government? A state government that would not put the National Guard out to act as a barrier from protesters attacking federal agents? Where the police were maybe unable or unwilling to provide that protection, which they have to provide. So we have to send in more people and maybe even federal and state troops if needed. And the judges will all go, yeah, well, that's what it says. And that's how simple this stuff is. It is how simple this really is. And when I say, local police, that's state police, that's the state, all the way down through the municipalities. The local police and state police are not required to act in the duty of federal agents, but must provide protection to those agents in carrying out their legal mission. Local and state police must arrest those citizens that interfere with federal agents who are carrying out their legal duties. Yeah. That they must do. If the state will not protect federal employees and federal property, cars, buildings, people, unable or unwilling, the president can order state or federal troops to restore order. Now, boy, I got up to page 4 already. Yep. Going along here pretty good. Former President Obama stated the other day that the violence in Minnesota is mainly the shooting of violent protesters should be a wake-up call. And it was not a wake-up call to protesters to stop being violent. That he was stirring the pot. And you had former President Bill Clinton get on there saying this is a direct threat to our democracy. And again, we don't have a democracy, Bill. We have a republic. Okay, just set that straight. If you wanted to call it a direct threat to our republic, okay, you can make that statement. But we don't have a democracy. How about if Obama and Biden had secured our borders years ago? ICE would not have to try to figure out who's a citizen here legally in the first place. There is a chicken and egg here. We don't have to try to figure out what came first. The Democrats purposely and intentionally made it impossible for federal authorities to act in a manner that could not interfere with the Fourth Amendment. They made it so you have to stop people, and they go, that's an unreasonable reason because he's black, or he's brown, or he speaks Spanish, or he speaks Italian, or his language, or his ethnicity. Knowing damn well that they're here and there's no way to stop it. There's no way to rectify it except for going into these areas and stopping people. They made it impossible. They took an illegal action and are now trying to make that action legal because they're saying ICE agents are acting illegally. It's a problem. And you can have arguments on both sides on what is right because it's in the Constitution. So while I would like to scream that an illegal has no true Fourth Amendment rights, they have some. But when they stop an American, a citizen, they have full protection of everything, all our rights. Is it a violation of those rights to ask you to show your driver's license? Now, if you have a real ID, it will have the little star and they send you on your way and thank you. Is it all right for them to only stop a certain group of people? And go, well, people with blue eyes and blonde hair, yeah. Have a good day. Is that right? Is it unconstitutional to have a national ID program? Can the federal government require people to have a federal ID? These are questions that need to be asked, and if they're asked, get a qualified answer for, because you have to. You know, so I can understand I'm going to ask that, can the federal government all right. Starting May 7th of 2025, the federal government requires a real ID compliant license or other acceptable form of ID like a passport for domestic air travel, entering secure federal buildings, and visiting military bases. While not a mandatory national ID card, it effectively functions as one for essentially essential activities. Okay. So now, most states now issue real ID compliant cards. So, you are stopped and you show your real ID and they let you go? Or do they process your name to see if you're on any type of list? Outstanding warrants? These are the questions that I say really have to be asked, because that affects all citizens. And like I said, I'm a constitutionalist. I'm a federalist. I wouldn't like to be stopped 12 times in a week to be asked my ID. But in the same breath, if I worked in a federal building, I'd have to show my ID. If I'm getting on an airplane, I have to show my ID. If I'm traveling, I must show my ID. And where, to me, things get interesting with this, I'm going to end this in about 3 minutes, will be I go to a hotel to register, they want to see a picture ID. But let's say they go, well, this isn't a real ID because it's not. Do you have a passport? Do you have anything to show who you are? Well, yeah, my driver's license. Well, I can't really use that. Well, no, if this was a federal establishment, I might agree with you. But it's not. And they say, no, here's the thing, real ID only. Or you must show us your passport from the country you're visiting from, or I don't have that. I live here. Well, you're not a citizen, right? No. Well, you were a citizen somewhere else, right? Yeah. Where's your pass? I don't have one. Well, then you're not staying here. Those are where problems happen. Those are where situations can happen. So, a government-issued ID that says, we know who you are, we have it, and you are not a citizen, but we know you're here, and because we gave this to you, you're here in some type of pending situation, and your driver's license expires on that pending date where we say it ends, whatever that may be, that's good enough. Welcome. No worries. You're covered. Those that do not and can't produce it, well, you're in a situation of there are your papers. Your papers do not seem to be in order, Herr Costa. Is that what is that what we're going to come down to? And you look at it and you go, oh, no, no, no. Well, you kind of forced us into that situation by not asking those questions at our border. So everything you're screaming about, no, no, we don't want to live in a state like that, you created. All right. With that, I'm going to say goodnight. I'm going to get this show up as soon as possible with limited editing. Yesterday's show is going up today, but I'll force that date into the 25th. Everyone be safe, be well, give to a charity if you can. If you don't feel like giving to a charity, please think about giving to a food bank. And not just food, they need money. By giving them money, they can target an immediate need for something. Very important. So think about it. Because when you help like a food bank, that is local and it helps. Say a prayer. Prayer does work no matter what a Democrat tells you. And with that, I am going to say goodnight and fade to black.